Hey there, wire weavers. Have you ever wondered how to get your jewelry to go from this to this? If so, be sure to watch this video because I'm going to walk you through my entire patina process step by step. My name is Wendy and I'm the wire weaver behind door 44. If you'd like to learn to make wire jewelry, this channel's for you. Today we're going to be talking about my patina process. You may recognize these pendants from the twig pendant make along. I'm going to go ahead and patina and polish these today and walk you through that process. And I'm also going to create a free download so that you'll have just a nice, quick, easy checklist that you can have in hand when you start to patina your jewelry. So be sure to look in the description below for a link to that download. As always, drop any questions that you have in the comments below and I'll answer those as I see them. Let's get started. And the first thing we're going to talk about here, I have two containers here. You can see one is copper cleaner and one is Neutralizer. The recipes for these will be in the free download, so make sure you grab that download today. The copper cleaner is just white vinegar and salt. And the reason it's blue is because I've used this cleaner for quite a while. And as you use it, it's going to leach copper out of your jewelry and into the solution. So this is the same recipe that I use for my pickle. And just like pickle, this, as it builds up copper salts in it, it does become toxic. So you want to dispose of this just as you would with your pickle. So keep that in mind. And then the Neutralizer solution, this is just baking soda and water. But I've got a special trick that I'm going to show you as we do this. So this solution here is actually, you can see it's got some dark residue in there. And that's because as I finish using my liver of sulfur solution, I dump that into my neutralizer and I just let it neutralize. And the reason I can tell it is neutralized is the water is clear now, it's no longer yellow, and it also doesn't smell of sulfur. So this is how I dispose of my liver of sulfur solution. This is how I neutralize it. And now that it's completely neutralized, it's totally safe to just let it go down the drain. So I'm going to stir this up a little bit, break up this baking soda here at the bottom. And you can see I'm just using a bamboo skewer for this. It's a tool that I use all the time. I always have some on hand in the kitchen. They're handy to grab and they work really well for this process. So I'm just going to break up that baking soda. It's kind of solidified down there in the bottom. Just break it up and I'm going to go ahead and dump that right down the drain and I'll be right back. We'll put together a new neutralizer. Okay, so my neutralizer solution is just baking soda and water. That's all, and I buy this in 4-pound boxes. It's inexpensive, and I do use quite a lot of it. I used to use just a couple of tablespoons of baking soda, and I found that really wasn't enough to neutralize the liver of sulfur. So I've since been using quite a bit more, and I'll just use, I don't know, maybe about 1/4 cup of baking soda. And then I'm just going to fill this up with tap water. And that's maybe 2/3 cup of water. So you want to make a pretty strong solution. Make sure that baking soda, you have plenty of it there so it'll neutralize your LOS. And now we're going to go ahead and clean our copper jewelry. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop my jewelry in there. Give it a little bit of a stir. And what this does, this is a mild acid solution. So what it's going to do is, one, you can see it cleans your copper. So notice how bright and shiny my copper is now. So that removes tarnish from your copper. But it also removes any oils from your hands, any oils from your tools. So it works sort of like a solvent to remove any oil residue. And you want to do that before you patina your jewelry, and that's just so that you get a nice even finish on your jewelry. If you have oil residue on your jewelry, the patina is just not going to take as well. So keep that in mind. It's a good idea to always clean your jewelry before you patina it. So we're finished with that cleaner. I'm going to go ahead and put that aside, and I'm going to rinse my jewelry thoroughly, and then we're going to neutralize it. So I just gave my jewelry a good rinse. I rinsed off all the cleaner solution, get all that vinegar and salt off of there. And now I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the neutralizer and stir it up a bit, get it Make sure you get that neutralizer, you cover everything. And then we'll pull that out and rinse it again. I'm going to do the same thing with this necklace. Just going to neutralize. Get that nice and clean. And then we'll rinse. Now I'm going to let these sit in the colander in the sink and running it with hot water running over them. I want to get my tap water as hot as possible. And that's not only going to rinse these pieces, but it's also going to warm them up. Because if you warm your jewelry, it just helps with the patina process. The patina is going to take a lot faster. So let me get that going and we'll come right back and set up our patina. Now you may hear a little bit of road noise while I'm doing this, and that's because I have my balcony door open. I'm letting some fresh air in, and that's because this liver of sulfur smells terrible. As you can imagine, it smells like sulfur. It has a very distinct rotten egg smell. I try to get some fresh air in here while I'm doing this. So I have about a half a cup of warm tap water in here, and you do not need a lot of liver of sulfur solution, just a couple of drops. So you see just a few drops in there. Now I think the instructions say to add a teaspoon, and that's way too much. It's going to be way too strong. Like I say, just use a couple of drops to about a half a cup of water, and you'll get this nice, lovely yellow shade. And that's exactly what we want. I'm going to put this aside, and now I'm just going to go ahead and drop one of my necklaces in. And it's a good idea to wear gloves while you're doing this, so I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on. I don't like latex gloves. They irritate my hands, so I wear vinyl gloves, and you can just get these in the paint department at your local hardware store. That's where I buy mine. I always find them in the paint department at Lowe's. So as you can see, this is already starting to darken, and if you stir it up a bit, that's just going to speed up the process a little. So just give it a swirl, kind of stir it up, and you'll notice that the chain oxidizes faster than the wire wrapped portions of this necklace. And that's just because there's so much wire there, and, for it to get in the nooks and the crannies and the wire weave. It just takes a little bit. And I like to let mine get fairly dark. Right here, this is a good level of patina, I would say, right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in my colander and rinse it. I'm just going to let some water run over that while I drop this other one in the patina. And again, we want to rinse off as much of that LOS solution as we can. And then we're going to go ahead and neutralize again, because just like the copper cleaner, this is also an acidic, mild acidic solution. So the reason why you want to neutralize is because the acid will continue to etch your wire. If you don't neutralize it, it'll just keep on etching into your wire. And it'll change the look of your finish over time, and it'll also make it'll patina faster. Again, it'll naturally oxidize faster. So we're just going to go ahead and neutralize these. And again, I'm going to rinse this thoroughly, and then I'm going to put my LOS aside and bring my neutralizer bath back. And at this point, we're just going to drop this back in there and give it a good stir. And you want to let this sit for a couple of minutes. I'd say as long as you can leave it, really. The longer you leave it, the more it's going to be neutralized and the better off you're going to be. But at a minimum, stir it around for a minute or so and just make sure that you get that neutralizing solution into every crevice of your weave. Again, we're just going to Run that under water. We're gonna rinse off all the neutralizer, and we'll go ahead and neutralize this necklace. Stir it up, get lots, make sure it's completely neutralized. Before we pull it out. All right, we'll rinse that one off. And then this is how I dispose of my liver of sulfur. So now that we're done with this neutralizer, I'm gonna go ahead and dump my LOS in there. I'll rinse that bowl, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and seal this up and let it sit, and it'll neutralize. It'll take probably a day or two, and it'll eventually turn clear. And then at that point, you can dump this down the drain. You don't want to dump it down the drain before it's neutralized. So make sure it's neutralized and you're not dumping harsh chemicals down your drain and into public water systems. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and burnish off the high points of that patina. So to do this, I've just got a little bucket here. This is just an old dish pack, dishwasher tabs, little bucket from that I use for this. And I'm going to go ahead and add a drop of dish soap and some warm water. So now I have some nice warm soapy water. And for the steel wool, this is super fine 0000 steel wool. You want to make sure you use the super fine grade. And that's going to bring out the highlights without scratching the finish of your jewelry. So it's not going to give you like a super matte brushed metal finish. It's just going to bring back those highlights. And you just want to tear off a piece about like that. And one thing about steel wool, you always want to use this in water. And that's to keep those steel fibers from floating around in the air and getting into your lungs. So just a little safety tip there. So now we're just going to start burnishing our necklaces. We're just going to bring back those bright copper highlights, and that's going to give us a nice finish going into the tumbler, and then the tumbler is going to polish that. So your stainless steel is going to give it a little bit of a matte finish. It's going to sort of a brushed metal finish, and this is super fine steel wool again, so it's not going to leave heavy scratches. But it is going to knock down the shine a little bit on your jewelry. And that's just part of the process of bringing those highlights out. But then we're going to use the tumbler to bring back the shine. So it's all just part of the process. And this is probably the most tedious part of the process. It's my least favorite. But it makes such a big difference that I can't justify not doing it. Now, one thing I wanted to mention while you're doing this, your steel wool is going to get really worn and it's going to start breaking up. As it does that, just grab another piece, pull another piece of wool off of your wool pad and start over with a fresh bit of steel wool. As the more you use this, the less effective it's going to get. And once it starts really breaking up and falling apart on you, it's just better to start with a fresh piece of wool. This is still working all right. I still have quite a bit left here, but you can see it's breaking up quite a bit. So here in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and grab a fresh piece of wool to finish up this polishing. But again, you just want to get in all the crevices. You want to hit all those high points wherever you have exposed core wire. You want to get that polished up and make that bright and shiny. So we're going to get in here on this tip here, clean that up, and these curls will shine those up. And then on your weave, just shine up those high spots. And that really brings out the texture of your weave. It's just so much prettier because you can really see that texture now. Whereas before, before we patinaed it, it was all one color. It didn't show off the texture as much. So this really brings out the detail of it. This is what takes your jewelry, really gives it a more professional finish and just makes it much more appealing to the eye, because there's so much going on with the highlights and the lowlights and the texture. It just creates a really beautiful piece. So I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to get my chain nice and cleaned up, get some highlights going on that chain. Again, we want to shine up, bring out the highlights on those wrapped loops. And then this one, because we have, basically 30 inches of chain that's uninterrupted with beads, we can just pull this through here like this. And we're going to bring back some highlights on our chain. See how that's coming out now? Give it a little better grip there. Get more steel wool wrapped around there, so we get nice even highlights on our chain. And just pull it back and forth a couple of times. And again, like I say, this doesn't have to be perfect at this point, because we are going to clean up this chain again once it comes out of the tumbler. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and scrub this in the sink with my toothbrush. I'm going to get, as much of that steel wool residue off as I can. I want to, if possible, I want this going into the tumbler with no steel residue, because those little bits of steel wool will come off in the tumbler barrel, and it's just going to sort of murk up your tumbler solution, and it'll also rust in there. It'll create rust. Now, your stainless steel shot will not rust, but if you have any bits of steel wool in there, those little bits will rust, and that again will also dirty up your shot, and it'll mess up your finish on the next batch that you do. So if you don't clean your shot between batches of tumbling jewelry, that's one of the reasons that you can get sort of an ugly finish on your jewelry. Now, I'm going to do another video on cleaning your shot, so be sure to look for that as well, because that's a maintenance item that you definitely want to do if you use a tumbler regularly. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this off, and I'll be right back with the tumbler barrels. Now, don't forget that there's a free download available with a tutorial for this patina process, and that tutorial will include a list of all the materials that you'll need, everything that I use, including, a step-by-step instructions for this process. Now, one of the things, this is sort of a bonus tip, I've created these little, I call them bones, and this is just something I use to keep my chains from getting knotted up in my tumbler. So to use this, I'm just gonna drop the chain through one end and feed it through the other. I'm just gonna go ahead and let that fall down. And then I'm just gonna keep looping that chain through here as many times as I can. And this allows the steel shot to get to your chain. We don't want to put it on there too tightly, because we want the shot to polish the chain as well. And this lets us do that without creating knots in the chain. If you just drop your necklace in your tumbler barrel without doing this, you're going to end up with a knotted mess at the end. And it's never fun to have to pull those knots out of there. So once I get that looped all the way through there as many times as I can, I just use a little piece of scrap weaving wire. This is 28 gauge wire just about a 3-inch piece. And I'm just looping it through that chain. And then I'm just gonna loop it through another link on the chain. And just twist those together. And this way there's no chance of my chain coming loose, getting knotted, and yet the chain is still fully exposed, so shot is going to, tumble through there. It's going to get fully polished. And when it comes time to pull it out, all I need to do is cut this wire off, and my chain is nice and neat. And I just made these using 12 gauge wire. This is about 4 inches of 12 gauge wire, and I created an 8-inch loop on either end, just a simple loop. You can see that, they're not wrapped loops. And I twisted it a little bit to harden it. And these can be reused over and over again. I just keep them with my patina kit, so they're always available when I need to patina a necklace. And again, if you have a piece like this, this rosewood pendant has some curls on it and the chain wants to get caught in there. So this just prevents that from happening. You just end up with fewer headaches in the end. Like I say, just wrap it around as many times as you can until you don't have any more chain to loop through. And then just tie off that end of the chain with a little scrap of weaving wire. So again, this is about 3 inches of weaving wire. I always have short weaving wire scraps laying around, and this is a good way to use those up in a way that's just not gonna, they don't completely go to waste, they get reused. And then of course this ultimately gets recycled. So that's it. There's your chain. Nice and neat. It's not going to come loose. It's not going to get snagged on anything. And I'm just dropping one necklace in each of my barrels. Then I'm going to fill this with warm water. And I filled it, as you can see, it's only about 1/3 of the way full. So just a little bit above the level of the shot. Some people like to use less water. I find that a little more water, it just helps create less friction. If you use too little water, then you really get a lot of friction there between your shot and your jewelry. I don't know. I prefer having a little more water in there, so it just sort of loosens things up a little bit. And then you want to go ahead and give it a good squirt of dish soap, and you can see I put quite a bit in there, just a good healthy squirt of soap. And then I'm going to seal these up, put them on the tumbler for about 2 hours, and I'll show you what they look like when they come out of the tumbler. Okay, my necklaces have been on the tumbler for about 2 hours at this point, and I'm just going to go ahead and take them out of the tumbler barrels. And to do this, you can just use this washer here as a little leverage tool to pry that lid loose. It's going to be on there pretty snug. And then to break this seal, just give your barrel a squeeze and that'll pop right out of there. And I'm just going to go ahead and dump that out. And there you see necklace. And every time you use your shot, you should clean your shot. I'm going to have a video that shows you how to clean your shot. Again, that's something you should do after every use. I honestly don't clean mine that frequently. I clean it about every 3rd use. And I just cleaned this shot today because I was shooting film clips for that cleaning tutorial. So my shot's pretty clean. And as a result, my pendant came out with nice, bright copper highlights. You just want to make sure you rinse everything really well, rinse your shot really well, get rid of all the soap. There's a chance that there's some steel wool fibers in here, so you just want to make sure you rinse everything really well. And then you want to let your shot dry completely before you put it back in the barrel for storage. I went ahead and opened my tumbler barrels and dumped the shot and the jewelry into a fine mesh colander. Now, if you go ahead and download my free tutorial for this, download that tutorial and I will provide links to everything that I use in this tutorial. So if you need to shop for a colander like mine, or you need to shop for steel shot, or even a tumbler, I'll have all of that information available for you. So this is what my necklace looks like when it came out of the tumbler. You can see I still have nice bright copper highlights, and it has a little bit of an orangey color to it. So I'm probably going to touch that up with a sunshine cloth just a little bit, but I'm going to let it dry first. Then we'll come back and take a look at giving these a little touch-up polish with a sunshine cloth or some polishing pads. As promised, I was going to show you a little bit about how I do my hand polishing. I had some technical difficulties with my camera, and that means that both of these necklaces have already been polished. But we're just going to go ahead and talk about the polishing products that I use, why I use them, why I like them, why I don't. And I also wanted to just talk about troubleshooting your finish from your tumbler just a little bit. Now, one of the biggest complaints I hear from people is that their jewelry comes out of their tumbler all one color. They've lost all the bright highlights. It just doesn't look as pretty as it did when it went in, and it's kind of a dark gunmetal finish, and it's all one color. It may come out shiny, but it's a shiny grayish black. There are two potential causes for that. One is your shot is dirty. You should always clean your shot after every use. I don't do that anymore. I did when I was making jewelry for sale and I was making hundreds of pieces a month. Nowadays that I'm teaching, I make, far fewer pieces of jewelry in a month. I use my tumbler maybe once or twice a week tops. So I don't clean it. I don't clean my shot between every use any longer. It's still a good idea to do that though. And I have a video, my next video is going to show you exactly how I clean my steel shot. So be sure to look for that. The second thing that could be causing this problem for you is that your liver of sulfur is not completely neutralized. Now, this is something that I began to really think about and look at recently. I had a conversation with another fellow jewelry maker who was having issues with her patina, and we both sort of came to the conclusion that maybe what's happening is the LOS isn't getting completely neutralized. So again, I have increased the amount of baking soda that I use in my neutralizing bath, and I also increased the amount of time that I leave my jewelry in the neutralizing bath, and that does seem to have made a difference. So if you're not properly neutralizing and completely neutralizing your jewelry after you've patinaed it, that is going to cause a problem as well, because what's going to happen is that patina is going to continue to work, and as it's in the tumbler, it's going to work on everything. It's going to work on the jewelry and the shot. So everything's going to become muddied up with a patina color. And the thing about tumblers is they don't remove finish. They will polish whatever you put in there. So if your jewelry goes in and it's solid black, it's going to come out shiny but solid black. So you really have to do that burnishing before you put it in the tumbler. You have to bring back these bright copper highlights, and the tumbler will shine. If that patina is not neutralized, it's going to create that problem where you're going to have one solid sort of dull color. So keep that in mind. Now there are two products that I use for hand polishing. My favorite, the one that I use most frequently, are sunshine polishing cloths. I buy these in 10 packs from Rio Grande. These cloths are worth their weight in gold. They're great. I always have one on my bench. Actually, I always have multiples on my bench in various stages of use. You can see here, I've got this one, which is fairly new. This is what I use for polishing finished jewelry. And then I've got this one here, which is pretty well worn and used. I'll use it to wipe off jewelry after I've sanded or filed. These last a long time, and like I say, they're worth their weight in gold. They do such a great job of polishing jewelry. The other product that I use are these Pro polish pads. These are about 2.5 inches square, I think. They come in, well, they come in several different packs from Rio Grande, but I buy the 50 packs. And the nice thing about these is they're a foam material, so they're really pliable, but they also have some body. They're a little bit stiff. So these work really well for getting into little nooks and crannies, like for instance, when I want to polish these copper rondelles that are between my check glass beads. It's great to get in there with just the edge of the Pro Polish pad, and you can kind of get in those tight spots. It's harder to get in there with a sunshine cloth, and that's why I use both of these products. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses, so they're good to have on hand, and neither of these products are very expensive. So that's all for today. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. Until next time, go make something beautiful.